Welcome to the SWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Okay, Ramat. So thanks for being here for another episode of the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. And today's topic, I think we were going to get into online learning, because obviously in this COVID time, it's unprecedented and people are not going into school amongst other places. But it can be especially trying for some of the students in the process, because they're used to going to class, seeing their teachers and their classmates and things like that. But obviously in this COVID time, it's especially difficult, and even more so for some international students that might be doing this not just online but distance learning too. So I'd love to hear some of your perspectives and thoughts in terms of like how have you been coping, how have things been in the session, and what's been challenging and what's been helpful for you in the process.
Sure. As you know, now everything has become online, whether it be from education to meetings to everything. So I'd like to share my experience about my online classes. When it commenced in mid-March, everything was all over the table. Obviously, the university was not prepared for such a situation ever, but they took a couple of weeks to figure out the entire online sessions, and luckily for me, they were considerate enough to reduce the burden by eliminating some part of the portion or maybe giving us some extra time to complete the exams. And I feel initially it was a little bit challenging to cope with a different style of learning, but I feel this is one thing that we need to continue. We need to develop a skill in this and continue for the rest of our lives. And I feel initially the lectures were synchronous in the winter semester and the summer semester, but I feel the university has given a lot of flexibility for the for the fall semester, because time zone wise I don't see much challenge, because more than half of my classes are asynchronous, which means I can watch all the classes according to my convenience, and they're uploaded every Monday, while the rest of the classes need live participation. So even though the difference for me is around 9.5 hours, I have the flexibility of choosing the time of my class, and I intentionally chose the morning ones in terms of Eastern Standard Time, so that I do not have to, be awake all night attending them, and then my sleep schedule goes haywire. So until now, online some perks of online studying could be, you could say that the flexibility of having the flexibility of watching the lectures at whatever time you want is probably the strongest point according to me. While one factor which I don't like about online learning is like the hands-on experience. Maybe I could probably in person. I used to go to the teachers to for some doubts after the class, or maybe online learning. I tend to get distracted sometimes because it gets a little monotonous, because the professor cannot see what you're actually doing on your laptop, right? While in person, you need to pay attention. So sometimes I do get distracted, and I feel like I need to cope up with that much better.
So can you walk us through? So obviously it's been a couple of terms online now, right? So March was the end of the spring term, which obviously it took a toll on a lot of folks because nobody was prepared, right? Not let alone the schools. And then if you took summer school, like how did those go? And then obviously the fall term, how did those go? Because that's a kind of two terms where folks were able to do. So in my experience, so I was teaching as well in spring too, right? So I do teach a class at one of the local colleges, and yeah, we weren't prepared. It was quite a challenge, but the school did their best, right? So we got together, we had lots of meetings in terms of how do we do this, and we kind of reset the program. They gave us like a week to kind of move everything online, which was great. And I think for me, I was less affected just because of the way that my course was structured. So I teach a course called Employment Preparedness, so resumes, interviews, networking, and all that sort of stuff. And the last 3 weeks of the course of a 14-week course is mock interviews, right? So we were on week I think 11 at the time. And so basically, I only had one course to teach online, which is kind of weird because you have to do it via their internal system, right? So I'm projecting, I'm presenting, but you don't get to see the little faces of all the students, right? So it's a little bit unnerving, but I would try to make it as engaging and see if folks could either unmute or type in the chat or whatever, or use the like the reactions, thumbs ups and whatever feature that they had, just to make sure that they were still around. Because when you have like 25, 30 students, you don't know if they're actually listening there, right? So it was pretty challenging for me. But then because the last 3 weeks were mock interviews, it was just kind of one-on-one sessions. So those were much easier because it's kind of like this, right? Connecting with one person, it was pretty straightforward. The only challenge is because I set them up like kind of back to back to back. It's just I had to be very timely. So if anybody had some sort of technical issue where they joined like 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late, that set things back pretty much. So I just had to be mindful about that, and the students were generally pretty good. So that was kind of my experience in the spring. I didn't end up teaching, or I don't usually teach in the summer, and I didn't end up teaching in the fall. But yeah, I'd love to hear how summer and fall went for you.
I feel summer semester I'd only taken one accelerated course, so it only lasted a month and a half. But I'd taken the other 2 months to devote some time to my other hobbies, and I didn't take up many courses in the summer. It was just one, and the current semester I'm taking a full course load. So for me, until now, it's going good because I'm actually liking online learning because I get to be in my home country. I'm enjoying out with my friends. I have the flexibility of watching the classes whenever I want to. So I'm getting to do everything possibly what I was doing in Canada. So not missing out on anything much. And yeah, let's hope my fault like my decision of coming back to Toronto in Jan would be mainly based upon how the online learning is being done, because I believe from winter semester onwards they're offering very few online classes. So I can try my luck to get into those, but if it doesn't happen, I don't see the point of going back to Canada and just watching the online lectures by sitting in the room.
What's the percentage of like asynchronous versus synchronous courses? Are all of them asynchronous or all of them synchronous, or like, because you mentioned a couple of them are synchronous?
So out of my 5 courses, I think 3 of them are asynchronous, and 2 of them have live lectures wherein not only attendance is required, actually they ask you for participation.
Right.
So you also need to attend and you also need to participate, and that counts towards your grade. So the prof knows that you're attending the lecture as well as knowing the content, because if you're participating, I mean the prof grades you upon that also. So he knows that you're engaged in the class. So I think yeah, two of my lectures and the tutorials for both are uh, synchronous.
How are you finding the learning experience between the two? Because you can kind of compare and contrast, like, and obviously they're different courses, the profs are different, so you can't compare exactly like apples to apples or oranges to oranges, but based as best you can, would you say that you're learning just as much in this asynchronous mode versus synchronous mode, or you do see quite a bit of difference in the synchronous mode, or maybe even there's something else where it's not the class, where because you have to participate, maybe there's more class connection where at least now you've kind of heard your other classmates, whereas in an asynchronous mode, like there's no interaction, right? You don't get anything. So talk to me a little bit about the differences between the two, and like what are you thinking are like kind of the pros and cons? And yeah, so you made a mention that obviously if everything's online asynchronous, you probably wouldn't come back. But if things were like online synchronous, like is there a difference?
I feel the biggest advantage of asynchronous over synchronous would be that the flexibility, honestly, because when you convert it to my time difference, it almost gets to midnight, and I mean, like the energy levels are quite low at that time. So I'm just in the mood that, oh, I want to just get done with the class right now and go off to sleep. Whereas for asynchronous lectures, I wake up fresh in the morning and I start it maybe by 10 a.m. and I start my lectures. So I'm more energetic and much more efficient than what I am at night. So what I do probably is I attend the lectures at night, even though I'm not at my 100%. And later on, for all the courses, they also post the recorded videos. So I need to participate in the synchronous ones. I try to participate as much as I can, but I also go with those videos because I know that I was not at my 100%, and I watch the same videos the next morning. So that works out for me. While I do agree, it is a major task that you're not able to connect with so many people than what you would in a normal classroom environment. But I feel the prof in a couple of my synchronous courses, they break us out into breakout groups, into smaller groups, and wherein it's just two or three of us discussing a problem and trying to solve it. As so the prof is obviously trying to sense of people in the classroom, so that just to give the feel of that you're not missing out on in person, and you're not interacting with anyone else. So I feel the breakout room system works really well.
But that's in the case of a synchronous class, right? Like they wouldn't do that in an asynchronous class. So in obviously one of the cons of the asynchronous is you have much less of that classmate connection, right? Because synchronous, everyone has to be around. There's mandatory that you have these breakout rooms, so that makes perfect sense. But there's really not the same sort of concept in an asynchronous class, right? Because you don't have like I don't know, you connect with people local in your time zone or you're part of the world or whatever, right? And people don't schedule like their own personal meetups or something like that, or Zoom calls or whatever with fellow classmates, right? So I can definitely see that as a bonus for the synchronous classes, but and trying to make most of not being in person. But the asynchronous ones, those are the ones that I'm quite curious about. But yeah, I think one other thing that I've heard about from other folks, at least ones that are obviously in a different time zone, is they've actually tried to almost shift their time, right? So the normal work day is kind of 9 to 5 for people, right? But what they do is obviously they work out with their parents or whoever they're living with to say, you know what, I'm going to wake up at like noon, right? But so that they're shifted maybe 3-4 hours so that they can stay up later, be a little bit more refreshed, and they basically have lunch for breakfast type of thing, and then they have like kind of a dinner, maybe a late night snack, and that's helped people for some of them, because obviously if you have a class at midnight your time, that's not great, right? But if you've woken up at noon, well, that's a little easier because you haven't woken up at like kind of the typical 9 o'clock or even earlier for some folks. But have you thought about that, or what are some of the tips and tricks or things that you found have been helpful in kind of managing the synchronous time difference stuff, or maybe even some of the asynchronous stuff? What has been helpful for you?
I feel the only thing that one needs to ensure is to avoid procrastination. I feel that is, I've done that for my until my midterms, and then got an alarming sign. Oh my God, like you cannot be so laid back. So I feel from now onwards, like I'm trying to cope up with the same lectures. So what I used to do is that if I don't understand some content about the lecture, and obviously they have like limited office hours, only like 1 hour per week, and if I've just missed that, maybe it's Thursday and I've missed that, then I cannot go. I need to wait until the next lecture. So what I think I was doing wrong is I was trying to push the lectures into the this week's lecture into the next week, and trying to avoid doing some subjects because it was a little, the content was a little challenging. But obviously, like towards the end, before the midterms and all, it got a little like the content was a lot for me to study within the last 2 days. But luckily I coped up with that, and maybe like after that I realized that I shouldn't procrastinate. So that is one of the major reasons, major advice which I would like to pass on. And Yeah.
And what does that look like? That's like creating a schedule for yourself and saying, okay, this is how much time I'm going to allocate to this course on this day, and my whatever stuff that I'm doing locally with family and friends, or like how does one avoid procrastination? Is that kind of like a you wake up and have like an affirmation that you say in the morning and do some meditation and like do some exercises and stuff like that, or like what has been helpful for you to help? Because I know a lot of students they struggle with procrastination, right? Especially when they don't have the accountability of having to be in class and having to go through the material and they have to now do this on their own, right? It can be quite challenging. But what's been helpful, or have you had like some study buddies that kind of say, well, we'll review it at the same time every day. That way we're keeping each other accountable. Or what are some other things that have been helpful for you?
I feel so my basic calculation would be that I have 5 courses this semester and I have 5 weekdays. So I try to aim that on each weekday I try to complete one subject at least. So let's say if it's Monday, then I try to complete accounting. If it's Tuesday, I try to do price theory. So I try to like complete one subject each day. And if there's some you know some content which I'm not able to cover in the day, then that is the first thing I will do the next morning before moving on to the next subject. So I feel uh, like I am more the most energetic during like morning and afternoon. So I try to wake up and complete all my studies so that the later half of the day I can just enjoy, um, watch the cricket match, chill with my friends, and talk to my buddies and spend time with my family. So I try to get done with the work as soon as I can, and then start off my night.
And how has the experience been with like online assignments and online exams and quizzes and tests and stuff? Because the assignments I assume are pretty much the same, right? You just do them online and then you just have to upload them somewhere, right? So I don't think that's too much different. But have they been like making more assignments or fewer assignments, and then more tests or fewer tests? Because obviously an online test is quite a bit different. So what have you found has been kind of challenging about that whole experience, like the assignments and the online exams and tests, and what has been helpful for you to kind of mitigate, and what do you kind of grow and do better for your finals that are hopefully coming up in like a couple months, right?
So I feel that in most of the courses they have increased the number of assignments because they've included more assignments, more weekly participation in class for synchronous classes. So while they've decreased the weightage for the exams, like
Mhm.
they've actually initially, what I remember, what I can recall from many of my courses is that they had a midterm and a final exam. But now, what in some of my courses they've done is that they have term test one, term test two, and a final. So and maybe some weekly quizzes and assignments here and there. So the weightage for each component has come down, and the number of components have increased, and the number of assignments, quizzes, participation exams have increased overall. So they're trying to split it up like that. But as far as term tests are concerned, I feel what they've done differently is that they create a question bank for maybe like 30 or 40 questions, and they jumble all the questions. And for instance, if I'm giving the exam, my first question would not be the same as person X's first question, because they jumble all the questions. And for me, if there are only 15 MCQs, but they create more number of questions to confuse, like they create, in short, they're creating another sample paper, like they're creating another paper for so that, and they jumble all the questions, so you cannot go back to the previous question once you've answered it. So once you've answered it, it gets locked. So this is a way that professors are using to avoid academic dishonesty. And I mean, even for me now, uh, when I was speaking to a prof, he was telling me that I was requesting him to give us more time or else reduce the burden on number of questions. Because I finished my midterm just like 20 seconds before the time ended. So my professor told me that like if I keep a buffer time, then the chances of people cheating is more. So
Right.
that's why I don't want to keep any buffer time so that students don't discuss it amongst each other. So that is the thought process. So this has been much different than what in-person tests would have been, wherein it's the same for everyone and everyone sitting on a different table.
Sure, and the I guess technology that they're using to do the test, it's pretty much open up a browser, go in to the test, and then does it start at a preset time, kind of like a countdown, like 3, 2, 1, and then question one, and so you mentioned that things are randomized so that people around you can't have the same, not necessarily have the same question, and then they minimize the time so that even if there's a chance where you have question one, but I'm working on question four, that I could discuss and give you the answer to question four, and then when my question one comes up, then you can help me with that one, that sort of thing. So they're trying to minimize that, and I guess it's a valid thing because with the whole online thing, like everything's open book basically. You can freely search the internet pretty much. You could have another tablet or phone or something that's looking up all that sort of stuff, and then obviously you have friends where you could easily be in the same room or as other people. Are many of your exams kind of recorded where they can see you as you're doing the exam, that sort of thing, with a video, or do they have those types of constraints?
I don't think so. I've experienced that until now, but I've definitely heard that some of my friends need to, like show their screen and
Right, right,
scan their desk before they're sitting, and keep their microphone video on, or maybe just keep their video on and microphone off.
right.
And the moment you take your eyes off the screen, like the technology. I mean, I think the software is designed in such a way that it takes a photo of you looking somewhere else, and then a moderator comes in and checks up on you.
Yeah.
So I think it captures the eye movement of the people. But I've not experienced that until now. For me, it's been either a take home exam or timed exams. So you
Right,
can start at whatever time, but the exam ends at, let's say, 6:30 p.m.
right.
So it's up to you. You need to enter the at whatever time according to your convenience, but you need to ensure that you have adequate time so that you can complete the test.
Cool. Yeah, I know there's all sorts of different technologies and different systems that are being used. So I'm just curious as to say like which ones have people experienced and what has been the most challenging for them and what's been the most helpful. Because like yeah, it's a burden on the professors and the instructors as well, right? Because they have to change their whole paradigm. How do I truly assess that you've actually learned something when like you can look up anything any point in time really, and yeah, so multiple choice questions, are they really going to help you assess learning, or do I have to make you write a paragraph but then that takes up more time to mark and stuff like that? So it's all these interesting things that people need to do in this climate. So yeah, I think it's challenging for everyone. I mean, I'm not a student anymore, but I do online courses, so I've had to shift kind of the workshops that I do to shorten them a little bit. Like in an in-person workshop, they would normally be 1.5, 2 hours. Online, it's hard to get people to sit for more than an hour, right? So 1.5 hours kind of the most you can make it, and even if you do, you have to keep it very engaging, right? Activities, get people to chime in, use like the reaction feature or chat feature or polling or whatever it is, and make it a lot more kind of entertaining and interactive. But you'll always have the people who don't pay attention, and you'll always have the people who are superly attentive, right? So it's doing those sorts of things. So sounds like we covered quite a bit of information in terms of online learning. So thanks for sharing that experience, and hopefully as this whole situation progresses, Maybe we'll still continue to do some of that. I would imagine that it's actually going to be a lot more courses still offered online, right, to give people the flexibility. But a lot of the value of school is the being able to interact with classmates, going into the facilities and using the actual campus and everything it has to offer. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the winter semester. So have they confirmed that everything's going to be online or in person, or have they made that commitment yet?
Yes, everything is going to be online, but
Okay.
I feel that they've kept it open that there might be some classes operating in-person classes,
Hmm.
but that might be that's going to be very less, and it might not even be for all the courses. It might be for few number of courses and even like limited number of students in them.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard that some of the in-person ones are the ones where have labs, right? So a lot of the science ones where you have to actually physically manipulate certain things and do stuff. They do that, but at like half capacity or like 1/4 capacity. So there's plenty of space between people doing stuff. So yeah, it's just an interesting time. Cool. Any other things that you wanted to cover or share with the folks out there for the online learning experience?
I think we covered almost everything. Almost all my thoughts have come out.
Perfect.
Uh,
So yeah, hopefully folks enjoyed hearing about the online learning experience and probably had a few tidbits in terms of some lessons learned. So it sounds like that uh, avoiding procrastination, scheduling yourself would be great. Taking time to take advantage of professors and office hours and any time where you can actually interact with classmates and stuff. That's been a bonus. And yeah, really putting it on yourself to be on the ball in terms of assignments and upcoming things, and then figuring out, well, how does it work for you, whether you shift your schedule and do things earlier or later, however you react to the day. Some of those things should be helpful for folks in their online learning experience. So yeah, thanks for sharing your insights on this episode, and look forward to chatting more on the next one.
Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Lukidanu, Lukidanu, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.